Welcome back to the Recreate Meaning podcast, and we are joined with Aaron Dutton and Andrew Smoother today, and myself, William Tulloch. In other news, the second version of the app is now available for everyone to access, and I guess I'll hand it over to Aaron to take it away with our first point of discussion today.
Oh, well, to access that app, it's unify.recreatemeaning.com. Install the home screen or search on the Android store Unify Technology Assisted Goal Setting. First topic to talk about, which I think this one's good. It's kind of personal to me. I found out Andrew can't cry.
I didn't know that was going to be on the podcast, man.
Yeah, up front.
So I'm not the only one that can't cry.
What's going on, Psycho?
Sometimes I chat to Aaron and I'm not sure if it's going to be part of some like study or something. I'm like, are you messaging me because you want to know, or is this going in like an Excel spreadsheet? Why don't you mention why that came up?
We were
We'll start the
messaging.
ball rolling and then I'll go into it a bit more.
It actually ties in quite well because we were messaging about the app being done, and Andrew said, "I don't know how you do it," and I said, "I feel like crying most of the time," and you said, "Not me. I don't have that feeling ever."
That's not what I said, but yeah.
Well, I can't remember what you said, but it's thereabouts.
I said I have
What's going
the
on?
emotional capacity of a machine, I believe was the words I used. But basically what I meant by that was I've spent so long, even in my childhood, like being told not to cry because boys don't cry and shit, that throughout my teenage years, I still got told that. And then in my adult years, I did it to myself. And now I just like, I don't know how anymore. I think it's been like 3 years since I cried. And I don't know what that feeling is anymore, Now, so every now and then I'm like, oh, this would be a fucking real great time to cry, right? This would be a
That's
good
not too
time
bad.
to let
At
it
least
go.
3 years is not never.
Yeah, see,
Like, I
3
feel
years
like,
ago was.
yeah, all right, okay. I was worried for you for a minute that, like, I'm like, really? Nothing? Like,
But when was the last time you cried, Aaron?
I actually think you might have been there.
Oh, the unhappy meal.
Yeah, the unhappy meal. The
Was that
infamous
really
unhappy
it?
meal. I think so. Dude, I've been on a good run since then. Like,
Yeah. Because I think it
Ian did
was
not get time.
around that time. It was around that time was when I went to Newcastle, which was the last. Wow, yeah. What about you, Will? Did you cry this week?
Well, like I haven't.
I think the last time Will cried, I gave him cheese.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was probably the last time I actually did like cry. But it's weird because it's like you get to the point for me anyway where I like shed one tear, and like the part of me that is hell bent on trying to keep things together is just like shut up and get to work. But like
Mm.
that day, that Aaron's talking about was when I come into work and my previous partner had just left me and I had to get refinanced on the mortgage and I was trying to push myself through work just so that way I could keep myself together. And I was like, it took, yeah, it was like I hadn't eaten, hadn't dealt with anything, I had all my furniture taken out of my house, and like things were bad. But the thing is like I went from like coping to mess in an instant.
Just call in sick. Why you guys? This is like what I thought when Aaron, you were telling me when I like not when I first started, but when we were living together about. I won't say names, but like someone at Seafood Town, something tragic happened with a child of theirs, and they came into work and just did their job. And it's like fucking call in sick. Take the day off. Who cares? It's a fish and chip shop. It'll run. Someone will cover the shift. This isn't like your mum gets fucking shot in the face in front of you and then you get in the car and drive to work. It's like this is unnecessary. Just go home. I don't understand the need to like, well, gotta power through. It's like it's just a day at work. Call in sick.
Well, it's like in the casual, like kind of casual community at work, it's like some people don't really have the luxury of doing that, and I guess that's enforced into their being, where it's just like I can't live on one day less a week, because it is irrational, because it's like yeah, you can survive on less money than you normally get. You just got to kind of not spend as much. But it's like
Yeah.
it's almost ingrained into our culture a little bit.
Mm.
Well,
You know, I
well, for
didn't
me-
call in sick once after Luke left. I'm not even joking. There was not a single day I called in sick. I think I called in sick once before he left, and then not again for like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
If I had a scheduled day off like a few months ahead, I was off that day. Otherwise, I was at work. I just didn't risk it.
For me, see, I don't like ever calling in sick because the money I've saved means more to me than my health or mental health or anything like that. Like I don't want to take
Yeah,
a,
because
I
it
don't want
costs
to
you
take a
like
step back.
$200.
See,
Yeah, dude, I would happily trade like a day of like pure mental or physical anguish for $200. That's
Yeah.
essentially the deal that's on the table anyway.
Mm.
So,
see, I'm in the boat where it's like I feel like a lot of people can kind of well, I could just be a psychopath, but it's just like if I take a day off for a mental health reason or anything like that, at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I just didn't go to work. What a piece of shit! Like I didn't go to work,
Mm.
and it's like that's
Was
just
that
not healthy.
was that your worst day at work? Would you say when you were when Aaron was hand feeding you cheese or whatever you were saying about like when you because was that day you worked was that the worst day you've worked at Seafood Town?
Uh, not in a sense of physical labor, but that morning, oh my god, like it wasn't, like I was in no state to do anything. Like, and I had already had days off that week for that reason, and I was just like, yep, back to work, you know? And it's just like one word
Mm.
literally collapsed out from under me. But having a genuine kindness interact with me in that moment of need really kind of buffered the day for the better. And
Mm.
dude,
that's why it wasn't the worst day, because I knew I was in good company after that.
yeah, and it's also if you're upset, a cheese, well, some cheese. Like, hey, Jesus.
Like,
That's all I gave him. I gave him it was like 5 slices of cheese stacked and a can of Coke.
A big slurp of cheese and you're good to go.
Your body recognizes that as things are gonna be all right.
That was like you at Christmas eating the salami out of the fridge. It was like such a small thing, but your body's like, yeah, this is good. This is helping.
it's like I think we've all kind of been in that position where you've been upset and you're just like, nah, I'm not going to eat or I'm not going to cook. And then like my finances say I can't buy food, and if I buy food, then I'm gonna put weight on, and then I'm just gonna have to work that off. So I might as well just like go to bed. And it's it's like that's
It's
the
the will
worst.
to death.
Yeah.
It's just like, I can save some money if I die this week. Like,
You see, sometimes I think about the fact that like not me, but you guys have got like mortgages and shit, and like there's a lot more serious stuff happening in our lives now, and it kind of makes me reminisce about the days where you just like get home from work, you guys would do a gym workout, and then get Macca's at like 11 p.m. and you get like chicken patties and shit, and it was like, and then we get home and just watch a fucking Planet Earth 2 and freak Darian out. And it's like that was the extent of like what our worries were, you know? Shit was good back then. And then we look like at the time we're kind of like, oh, this sucks. We gotta what finally have a mortgage in 5 years. That'll be good. And then in 5 years you're like, fuck, I wish it was simple again.
I miss those
see,
days.
I'm right on the other side of it now. Where,
Hmm.
for instance, here's the thing: I sent you a link to a hotel, the hotel down south, the 15-room one.
Yeah, they should change the name. They shouldn't call it that, but yeah.
I could sell my house and buy that hotel, be running a hotel like next week, and have less debt.
No, do you know? Did you see where it is?
Well, I'm not going to do it because obviously I'm not going to go into that
You
as my
could
business.
instead of sleeping in one of the rooms, you could probably sleep on the main road and you wouldn't get run over. There's a high chance you could sleep through the night and not get run over.
Yeah, probably. But like, you know
So
what I
that
mean?
speaks to whether you'd fill 15 rooms every night.
I'm on this this sort of cusp now where, because I've had the mortgages for a little while and things have been going all right, opportunities opening up again. And like, I don't really want to run a hotel down south. That's not what I want to do. But I could.
Mm. But you
See,
should.
Like,
the other thing about having mortgages and stuff like that is like you kind of get these reality checks sometimes where you're kind of just like, doesn't change anything. Like it's like you don't have like it's just like other bills. It's like you can be a little bit flexible with it. It's like not as stressful as it might seem from an outsiding perspective, you know? And it's cheaper than renting, which is really weird.
a lot cheaper at the moment. That's
It's
it.
weird how that's the case, honestly, that you can mortgage a place and it's probably going to be a better deal than just renting.
So interest rates don't make any sense at the moment. We're in a very abnormal economy. This won't
Mm.
be like this in 20 years. It'll be reversed.
Yeah. And I don't know. I miss those old days just for the the fact
What?
the bowl sack. Nah. Just the fact of like the connectedness and the groupness of it all. You know, like I look back on it and I
Mm.
actually genuinely miss even the bad times. I'm kind of just like, it was funny when we cooked up all that sweet potato in the microwave and it literally turned out like shit. Like,
I think a big factor is the in-personness. Like,
Yeah.
when was the last time I saw you in person, Will?
that was when we went to government house and we
Oh yeah,
spoke
no,
to
we
those
did. Okay,
psychologist psychos.
but even that was like 2 months ago or more. And then before that was probably Boxing Day, you know? It's like in a month it'll be like we've seen each other twice in a year. And when we were going from seeing each other almost every single day, it's like, you know, obviously those times aren't really as common.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing because like I genuinely miss working, especially with someone who can make something anything funny. Like,
Yeah, I don't tell jokes anymore, Andrew.
You just
Fucking suck.
crumbfish.
Pretty much.
I've become
Dude, my
more
jokes now are way worse.
and
Yeah.
yeah, like it's one of those things where it's like the adaptation of the time, and it's like now considering we're post COVID, I don't think any of us are good at organizing any events because it's like let's go Pancake Manor this day, and it's like we all have different work schedules, and it's like
Yeah,
we
literally.
we easily forget stuff, and then it's just like we don't get to enjoy those nice barbecues and nice things like that, and that's just a thing of
Can we
the
organize a thing now?
well. I'll start the barbecues. Want to come round?
Maybe not on the record, because then we'll have like my mum and shit show up, because I'm getting her to watch the podcast, by the way.
Mm. That will
Um,
fella.
Here's what I'm all in on. I'm all in on whatever it is, this next step I take in life, that it will have like a social element. Because I've spent the majority of this year either at work or in this room. Like I'm
Mm,
not even joking.
yeah.
And it's been productive, but good lord, I'm dying. Like,
Yeah.
It's been
That's kind of how I
genuinely.
felt when I was work from home, because if I was working, I was in that room, and if I was not working, I was out in that room. So it's like walking between room, and kitchen and just living like that fucking sucked. And then there was no alternative, because it's like this was during lockdowns and everything, so it's like it's not like I can really go anywhere. Like even if I was to go out, what am I gonna do? And then I'm working weekends, so if I was gonna go out, like Emma's working, so it's just it was the worst combination of like a triangle of things that would lead any person into nothing but depression.
plus you had
And
leg trouble, so you
I
couldn't go
did, yeah.
anywhere that required like legless or
And,
legs.
and I got that job because of that. I got that job because it was work from home and I had to not I couldn't do physical stuff. So it was like, that's just fucking like 6 things. And man, since leaving that job, even though I'm not getting like huge hours with the new job, it is just so much like infinitely better
Mm.
from so many, not even like things I've gained, but like worries and stresses that I've lost of like the hours, the shit money, the schedule being awful. And not having to worry about that anymore is so like relieving. And it was such a good decision. So
It just proves
Oh,
that
that's good.
sometimes quality of life decisions are much more important than, say, goals of other standing. And
mm.
Well, it
I,
sounds like he's been rewarded anyway. He's got quality of life and money by the sounds of it, which that's a good deal.
Well, no. See, I wouldn't say I've got money because my hours since I'm in training with the new job are real. Like I'm on like 10 hours a week at the moment, and but that's like my first 2 weeks. So this week I've got a few more, and I think it's my third week this week, and I'll probably be on closer to like 20, 25. And then next week I'll have more again. Just because like as I'm with one client, I have to learn the new clients and then like you know get shifts on each place. But if I only know one person, I can only be put on there. But once I'm with multiple people and I'm working every day at a different place, the money will be so much better. The hours will be better. The days will be better. The like the work I do will be better, and like the satisfaction I get will be better because it is definitely more meaningful. It's not just like a person calls up because they deleted an app and they don't know how to download it. It's like this person might die if I don't show up to work. It's like shit that actually means something, and that in itself gives a sense of fulfillment that fucking troubleshooting phones can't ever give. I think because there's nothing ever serious enough when someone calls up to get their phone fixed that I will need to worry about. It's not ever a case where it's like, if I don't do this, something horrible is going to happen. It's like, if I don't do this, you might not get to play that game tonight. That's like the worst of it.
the short-term
Fair enough.
sacrifice.
Hmm. Aaron,
What's up, man?
what's next on the list?
I was giving it 10 more seconds and I was gonna prompt.
Of silence?
Yeah, right, that's insane that I would let that happen.
I think we went through 5 just then, and that was unbearable.
Imagine someone listening on their phone would have time. They get it out their pocket, look at the screen, and we're all just there like.
Yeah, no, because you know what they do? They'd be listening, and then they'd be like, "Oh, it's turned off. I'll have to." And then they grab their phone out and see us sitting there and be like, "Oh shit, no, it's still going."
Okay.
And then they hear us doing this afterwards.
It's a it's a
Alright, yeah.
comedic silence followed by a batch of awareness, hyper awareness followed by another silence.
I've heard of comedic pauses. I don't know about comedic silence.
We
Okay.
are learning how to do the things.
What about comedic ending the podcast? Is that a thing as well? Is that the next step up from silence?
Yeah, it's a 10-minute outro of just silence. I did remember one thing I wanted to add to what you said before though, because I was trying to remember what it was and I forgot it. But it's like, do you reckon having those years of being stuck inside has actually altered your ability to socialize outside in the environment? Because COVID's kind of fucked me up a little bit. I'm kind of just like, I go to Bunnings and I'm like normal, but then I'll do something and then I'll be like, that was fucking weird. I was like, that's
Like,
fully weird.
like what? Like you
What you did
slap
there,
someone or something?
you get to a specific place, and then you left what you do vague.
Yeah, like
So what do
Yeah.
you do at Bunnings? That's very weird.
well, like the cashier will speak to me, but I didn't listen to what they said at all. Like, I'm just like, yeah, card please, and they're like, oh, actually, do you know how to use this? That's what they've asked, but I'm like, yeah, FFOS. Like,
I do that all the fucking time, but it's normally because I'm listening to music or like not listening at all, and I'm just like, they're like, how did you want to pay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, thanks. And it's like, oh, that's fucking awkward.
yeah, I used to be so much more socially aware before COVID, and now I'm just like lazy as hell. I'm
Alright, well, I think COVID for me has made me better at socializing.
With the year you've had off leaving any room.
No, no, here's my problem, right? I've thought this the other day. I wrote this down in the Unify app. I said I'm not good at meeting new people, but I think people are not good at meeting me. So
Okay.
I'm just gonna.
It's their fault.
Well, here's the thing. I could like some people. I can just fucking vibe with straight away. I just immediately we just go to talk and we're all sweet. Other people, I can't even respond to what they say.
yeah, like I've had issues that like that as well. Like I don't know, I don't give a shit.
It's comedic effect.
Like
No, no.
some topics I'm like, oh yeah, how's the weather? And they're like, the sun. The sun goes to bed after 10 years. I'm
Every
like,
10 years.
yeah, I'm like, sweet buddy. I'm like, am I the weird one for asking if the how's the weather?
I feel like every now and then you meet someone, and you're always like, it's someone that you're like, if we get along, this could be a thing where we like hang out or something, and then within like a minute that it's not gonna happen. It's so funny when there's something that comes up within 60 seconds that you're like, this isn't gonna work. Like if they say they like punching babies or something in the first 10 seconds, and you're like, oh fucking hell, there it is.
Yeah. No, I have a few of these things. I got like little rules that if someone does them, I pretty much rule them out as potential friend. But one of them is if they don't like something, if they announce like let's say you say something and they disagree with it. Like maybe you be like, "Oh no, I'm not in the mood for a Coke. I'll drink a lemonade." And for some reason they really like Coke and really don't like lemonade.
They
Then
like
instead of
drink the Coke.
well, that's the thing. Just two things here. You'd be a psychopath, and you could like maybe like grab them under the arm with a pinch and be like, "Drunk the cock." But
Who
that's
are
not
you
what
even
I'm talking
talking
about.
to?
I'm talking about people who are like, oh, this guy's not drinking the Coke. He's drinking a lemonade. Everybody, everybody. Those people, I'm done with straight away. I don't know how to respond to it.
Yeah,
I should have read the next topic.
yeah. I don't know. Well,
Actually, I want to. There's something else on that as well. Is when you can like you think it's like banter, or you'll say something, and then sorry, they'll say something, and then you'll say something as like a banter thing, but then they'll be like, no, the other thing that I said, and you're like, oh, okay, sorry, yeah, the thing you said, and it's like, this is
That happens to
so
me all the
weird.
time.
Yeah,
I fucking
and
go
it's
in
like
for a joke with people, and they don't get it.
not overriding your thing. I'm just expanding on it. Relax,
yeah, fucking people
Yeah.
are people. Oh, I hate fanatics. I hate entering into a conversation like at a university campus with someone, and I'm just like, yeah, psychology's got some pretty wacky fields, eh? And they're like, yeah, existentialism, fucking losers, fucking useless cunts. I'm like, I've already walked away. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck that.
I like to get real political in the first 5 minutes to know whether I should even bother, you know? Like,
Chuck your
that Trump
feelers
guy's
out.
pretty hot, eh? And they're like, "Ooh, no." And I'm like, oh, fuck, whatever. Try someone else. It's fine.
Usually, I try and bring up that child slavery conundrum, and people tend to walk away.
Did Trump do that?
Oh no, it's just related to American news. No. What's the next
You know what I
topic,
don't
Mister?
understand? They say child slavery's bad, right? But then they were okay with slaves. People are just old babies. It's the same thing, just takes a longer time. You know? Anyway, what's the next topic?
Yeah.
The next topic's about worms.
Ooh.
What's the other one? What's after that?
Uber Eats and poor property investments.
Alright, we'll do worms.
There are worms and they did a
Yeah.
study. Worms develop new neurons in their worm brains as they go through life, and there's 60% difference in the neurons between worms, implying that each worm has essentially its own personality, and that it's 60% difference on like the hardware level than the other worms.
I remember
There's
talking
a
to
thing here. Yeah.
yeah, because
Well,
we
the thing that I think about this is I think you can learn new techniques for thinking that get encoded into your brain, and I think some people don't have some of them. Does that
yeah,
make sense?
because I remember talking to you about this the other day briefly, and I agree with it as well. And it's kind of interesting to think that not only can you wire in a new network or have the potentiality to, but the fact that you can talk to someone and also with that knowledge acknowledge that they might not even have the framework to deal with what you're talking about, or you're not might not even have the framework to deal with what they're talking about, just based on pure experience. You know?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this because this is a thing, right? Sometimes you learn new things and then you see them everywhere. And I think that in the process of learning the thing, you change your brain. So I think that there's difference in people's brain architecture, and that there are certain things that can be learned that get built in, and they alter how you perceive reality. And it's not really anything breakthrough to say anything like that. But I think that what we need to do is we need to work out what are the blind spots that people have in their perception, so that we could just have them, I don't know, not run head on into like disasters.
Yeah, the instant application that comes to my mind is like giving people the ability to acknowledge the positives about doing things for their health, exercise, and stuff like that, so that way they can potentially just avoid certain diseases, if you know what I mean. And the framework of thinking could even just be long term versus short term. They might not even have a concept like a conceptual developed idea of consequences in the long term, you know?
Yeah, long-term blindness is massive. Like literally everything's easy if you have a long-term view and you can preserve your stability and just be patient long enough. Because the bank will literally let you make a $500,000 investment, and with the current rate of asset price appreciation, like in 7 years, your $500,000 asset can be worth $1 million. And all you got to do is just make that investment and chill for 7 years. Just keep it going.
Mm.
Like, don't go too hard on the drugs, don't drink too much, stay employed, keep a little bit of cash in the bank in case something goes wrong. And then at the end of it, you're essentially, you're a millionaire. You're kind of set. And
Yeah,
it's just so weird that people aren't willing to do that. They just stay in the day to day, short term, sort of do what's easy at the expense of like making next month harder. And like, I have a feeling that long term blindness is a problem, and it can probably be solved by just learning the right series of facts, because then you gain the ability to perceive the world through a long term lens when you choose to do so.
yeah. And like one of the things that I want to bring up in line of this is I do think that the right types of thinking can be very helpful, but a lot of people don't either get access to a low level version of the ideas, or they get told a good idea by someone who never actually used the idea. So they're like, "Oh no, I'm gonna dispense with that because obviously that didn't make that person rich." But it's like having a judgment of quality of information seems to be an issue as well. So like, for
Yeah.
example, I just want to ask Andrew, like when it comes to finances and stuff like that, do you have any like things that you would have told yourself 3 years
Careful.
in the past?
I would have said, Damn, you got some savings. I'm jealous, man. Nice. I it's 3 years ago.
Well, let's go five, five, six. You know, whatever, a significant amount of time.
I would say probably like before I started before I moved in with Aaron, because that was around the time before I started. Like I was on Centrelink before I moved in with Aaron. Um, shit, I need to grab the charger really soon. But before I moved in with Aaron, obviously because I started working with you guys, that was the first time I'd had like a consistent job for years. And before that, I was on Centrelink for a while, and then before that, it was like jobs for like 6 months, and then I'd get fired or quit, and then I'd start a new job for 6 months. But I was always like just getting paid fuck all, like 300 bucks a week or something like that. And so I'd pay rent because I was living in share houses, and it would all go. I didn't really have any time to save or any money to save or anything like that. Um, but I don't know what advice I would give myself other than to invest a little earlier, I think. Obviously, savings in a savings account is a good idea. Um, invest in Tesla or Bitcoin back then, because 6 years ago it would have been fucking 10 cents a coin or some shit.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. What would you tell yourself?
Well, like, see, the thing is I get your point about having not having a consistent income. That's of a significant value. But like, I guess one of the things that I would probably tell the viewers to kind of look into, or things like that, is if you're in a situation where you do have some capital or something like that, you could look into some quality ideas like value investing or assets versus liabilities. But you're hearing that from someone who's on a podcast that you only know minimal information about me, and you know that I have a mortgage and I have stuff like that. But it's like it seems to be that people, I would say that the most valuable thing I could have taught myself would be the mental model of some of those things. And some of those things are quite complex and difficult to kind of unpack, and they're quite difficult to learn on the first run through. But I guess an overarching thing that I would have told myself 5 years ago was to actually seek out ideas that seem to work, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense. And that's why
Mm.
it comes up with the worm idea, because it's like if a worm is 60% different from another worm just from its pure experience, then some of that 60%, or in our case probably 80%, because we chug through neurons like crazy, is life changing. And I do think that there's not a real big positive space for concepts and ideas like that that can be explained in a way that's literally pragmatic and useful. So I've spoken for long enough, but yeah, that's what I would have told
Yeah,
myself, is to get better models.
I think you're right, but I think it's also to do with like upbringing, especially in terms of like what you learn from your parents and what your parents taught you about money and financing and saving money and that kind of thing. Um, I didn't know anything really about stocks until I would say 3, 4 years ago. Just because I never really got into that with my parents. They never really taught me anything about that. They didn't tell me, certain things of what were good ideas, what were bad ideas, what were things to avoid. Because obviously they would know this shit. They're a lot older than me because they're my parents. And they would have made mistakes along the way. They would know things that were hurdles for them that they could have very easily told me to avoid. And instead, I kind of went into it blind, and then I had to make those mistakes, and I'm having to make those mistakes. I'm not going to act like I'm past it. I'm in
Mm.
the middle of that shit now. There's stuff I've invested in that hasn't gone good, um, and obviously there's some things I've invested in that have gone well by sheer luck. But even just going back to when I first invested in those things, I could easily tell myself, in the past which ones went good and which ones went bad. But I think it was important for me to learn that, and that's not something my parents could have taught me. But knowing how to invest would have been good,
Mm.
because I had to figure that out myself, and I didn't know when I was doing it if this was even the right way, or if like, because when I bought Bitcoin, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I did buy a little, but I did it wrong, and then when I tried to cash it out, I just never got the money. And
Ah.
I don't know.
A
You can't
tragedy.
really. I don't expect my parents to teach me about Bitcoin or anything, but that's where I don't know if you're the same, Will, if you had much financial like teachings from your parents, but I pretty much didn't. And my mum, you guys both know my mum. I don't know if you know much about my mum, but she seems like the kind of person who would be able to give me financial advice. She's homeless, but um, she's not homeless anymore. That was a joke. But she owns, multiple rental properties and has since I was like 12. And you'd think that'd be the kind of person who would give me these tips and tricks of how to get there early. Um, and Aaron, I'm sure you had a different experience with this because your parents are billionaires or whatever, like low-level billionaires, and they would have been able to they would have made those mistakes themselves, and they would have been able to tell you, don't do this one, don't, invest
Well,
in
hang on,
this,
hang on,
don't
hang on.
do that.
I had a so I brought stocks before anyone in my family, apart from my grandmother's brother, who doesn't really talk to us,
Hmm.
and I had a rental property before my parents.
See,
What? Oh, a rental because they own theirs, but they don't have another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
see,
So I was a little bit lucky in the fact that like they could tell me about the process of buying a house, but apart from that, and that's really valuable stuff because that's kind of like a blind spot. But apart from that, dude, I was flying blind, man. Like,
Mm.
see, the thing here is like the most important thing for me, I think, for this is like the quality of the information and the quality of the sources of where it's coming from. And I think it's really hard to not only delve into an idea in an in-depth way, but also trust the idea fully. Because it's like when you own stocks, most people might not know this, but it's like for value investing, I could be a little bit wrong on this, but it's like most of the time you shouldn't really sell. You should just kind of just ride the market like it would be like a kind of metaphorical river of chaos. And it's like if you don't know that and you buy stocks, you could panic sell and you could do a whole bunch of stuff. But it's just like I feel like there's a real need for quality bite-sized bits of information that are going to actually help individuals map the world better. If that makes any sense,
yeah,
and that's why I
yeah.
think it maps onto the brain network stuff a lot because you can listen to Joe Rogan and everything like that, but it's like it doesn't seem well. I don't know. I don't watch Joe Rogan, but I don't know if there's anything that's of that quality. It's almost like you need a big brother that's telling you that there's a positive thing to do, so that way you can trust in the knowledge of whoever's telling you it as well as and act on it as well.
Well, this is one of the current problems of the world is we're in the weirdest economy ever. So anybody who's 30 years older who's going to try and give you advice is going to give you really shitty advice because it's it's never been like this. Like like it's entirely different than what it was 30 years ago. And we're starting to see, I would say, a lot of what we're seeing where people are making money at the moment are symptoms of a sick system that's about to, I mean, like, I don't know about collapse, but things are reaching this massive tipping point where a lot of what people are seeing as, like, I don't know, positive change for the future now, it's not going to be positive change. It's just symptoms of a sick system. Like, I think the best example is Bitcoin. Is like Bitcoin should have never been able to take off because it should be the case that our actual physical, our paper money that we trade should be backed by some sort of asset to give it that value. Currently, the money that we trade is not backed by any assets. So, what's the difference between $10 of, paper money not backed by any assets and $10 of digital tokens not backed by any assets? And like, there's no difference. So, we had this unnatural financial, like economic environment where an asset like Bitcoin can take off. But if instead of trading paper money not backed by anything for Bitcoin, if you were trading actual paper money that means that there's gold somewhere with your name on it, Like, I don't think you'd be as quick to trade that for something like Bitcoin. And I think a lot of what we're seeing at the moment just doesn't make sense except in the context of a very, very strange and sick system that currently is transforming into something that, God knows what it's going to be soon. But like, we can't keep printing money and buying actual physical goods with it. We're reaching the end of that.
Well, I
See,
think Bitcoin also isn't being used as it was intended because it was supposed to be used as an actual currency. It
Oh
wasn't
yeah,
supposed to be just an investment, you know. It wasn't supposed to be like you put $100 in and hope it's worth 1,000 next month. It was supposed to be
yeah,
like at a capped or a set price, not like hard capped or anything. Just like it would, you know, it wouldn't fluctuate as much as it does. It would kind of sit steady, and then
yeah.
you could
Find its
use it
place.
freely to purchase a pizza or whatever. And the whole thing about the guy in 2012 or whatever who bought a pizza for what amounted to be like $16 million. And it's like, yeah, but that's because Bitcoin stopped being used for its purpose and it started being just an investment. And that kind of, I feel, ruined Bitcoin. And now it is just an investment. And people are like, the only reason people talk about Bitcoin is because they want to make money. No one's ever
Yeah,
like, I'm going to use Bitcoin to buy something.
yeah. That's the value of Bitcoin is there's a good chance that the person who you sell it to will pay higher than what you paid for it. But
Mm.
then once that reverses, which that will reverse, like, uh, I don't know how much more money Bitcoin's going to soak up as an asset, but unless it is the case that governments and banks and, corporations start adopting it massively, like, how many more people are left to buy Bitcoin for higher prices than the next guy? Like, I think that we're going to reach a tipping point where all the money's going to try and leave at once, and we're probably going to see a massive dip in the price, and
see,
that'll have a
Mm.
real effect on people's psychology. You won't want to own, like, if you bought for 80 grand and it drops to 8, you're not going to want to own it.
I also think this is important to add to the point of the first episode that we ever did to the podcast with the complexity of the world. We're living in a very complex time. And
Mm,
I think the starting point of the apps and like these discussions and everything and the whole purpose of this is to give quality information and to narrow in on the personal experience. Because it's like Bitcoin seems to be a train that's running into the like into a pit, and we're not always given the best scenario growing up or given the best advice what to invest on, how to secure your future. Should you buy a house? Should you not buy a house? Should you buy stocks and that? But it's like if you're narrowing in on your personal experience, and I'm pretty sure we still have the social element in the app as well, where you can look at what work has worked for other people and you get access to that information. And I think that's the quality thing that we can get out of this, because even if the system is kind of crashing, a product like the one we're trying to offer our users and our clients is like it's literally trying to give something that's helpful. And I do think that's much like good quality information is really hard to come by, especially in a pragmatic way.
yeah.
I just need to grab the charger or the computer's gonna die again.
Yep.
Just
All
continue
right.
on. I'll just grab that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, while we've gone, I'll add a couple things because one of the things to understand about the world at the moment is when they print money, like it's money that's created from nothing, and then it's used to buy actual physical goods. So one of the things that can happen is a country like the US can print money and it costs them nothing to do so. They just do it digitally. And then they can use that money to buy goods from a place like China. And then actual physical goods are put on a ship and they arrive to the country. And, for essentially doing nothing but changing a number on a computer, the actual physical commodities and resources of the world are assembled into products which then get moved internationally to the people who just change the number on the computer.
See, I feel like
This is
that's detaching
oh
things.
yeah,
Yeah. And
it's so unsustainable.
mm,
Like I can't even understand why anybody is willing to trade in these dollars anymore. And I understand the appeal for Bitcoin. but I don't think Bitcoin's the answer. Like my answer has been to go as deep into debt as possible and wait. But that's probably a bit of a risky strategy, and I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. Like in certain ways, I'm positioned for stability that perhaps give me a bit of an edge.
Plus, you've got
But
your debt is tied into physical things as well. And I think
well,
that's an
that's it. Like
important
yeah,
thing to note. It's like if you have a massive amount of debt tied into a business that's supplying food to a section of a village or something, saying just a hypothetical, or providing a service that's actually useful from the ground up. It's like that's not debt anymore. It's regardless of if it's in Bitcoin or money or actual physical goods, you're still providing a useful service.
yeah, and like my debt is tied to actual real estate investments. So every time they print more money, the prices of assets gets inflated, and it's because the value of the house doesn't change. It's the value of the money. So as the money becomes worth less, my house is seemingly worth more in dollars, but it's the same house. It didn't move. So as they print money, inflation keeps going up and up and up. Um, Essentially, once the inflation hits, the asset prices go up. Everybody starts to get pay rises and whatnot. Like we've had those start to hit now. And that makes it easier for me to pay off the initial amount that I've borrowed from the bank. Um, and I wouldn't recommend that everybody go as deep into debt as possible, but I think one of the best ways you can protect yourself from inflation is to gain the ability to turn, sort of certain commodities or, resources into usable goods, or to provide a service that is something that's actually required, perhaps required regardless of the value of money. So, the ability to change a tap, that's the kind of thing that it doesn't matter if it does not matter what the value of money is. If you have a tap and it needs to be changed, you're gonna have to do that. Um, and I think that that's how we're gonna have to engage with the economy in the future is like less speculative investment in, say, Bitcoin, where that's another asset that's not tied to any physical good. Um, and like I think the stock market's set to drop as well, so it's probably going to be like less worrying about investing in stocks and more about just doing the work for ourselves and actually building assets that can integrate with the economy in a real way.
Yeah, because
Well, welcome back, Andrew.
Thanks. Just slipped into the.
slipped into the DMs. See, I've been
Hmm.
thinking about this a
Actually,
lot. Unless you want to go, Andrew, you go.
no, go.
I was just going to say, a lot of people seem to be in the commodity of entertainment at the moment, which is one of the things that we're kind of trying to compete with as well with this. But we're trying, in my head, we're trying to offer like a useful tool and useful knowledge and stuff like that to try and focus in on people's lives, yada yada yada, etc. But it's like considering I've had these conversations with you, Aaron, and I'm kind of aware that money could potentially be something that is quite indeterminate of its actual value. I think one of the best things that I've been doing is building skills, and
Mm.
like I would encourage people to build skills because it also maps onto building new neural networks, and you
Oh,
see the world
definitely, yeah.
differently after you build something, or if you interact with a tool or something, you see the world differently. You know?
Well, just to offer a little bit of a model here, there's like the two primary realities is you got nature and you got society. And when you're dealing with anything that's society based, attention is the base currency. And if you can get people's attention, usually you can get their money, or you can get some money from someone for some reason, because whoever controls attention, that they're able to direct the flow of goods and services in the economy in some way, and there's always someone willing to throw money at that. When you're engaging with nature, you're trying to take these sort of base commodities, whatever it is, maybe you can get from the land or maybe you dig, or maybe you turn wood and natural resources into actual products, and that's how you provide your value. And I think it's a really good idea at the moment to gain the ability to perhaps produce value for other people independent of whether or not you have the attention, because social media has made the fight for attention, into this really weird Pareto distributed winner take all system. And like, I think it's going to be a lot harder in the future to say make your money as an advertising executive, but I think it's going to be a lot easier to make your money as someone who can literally pull food from the ground.
Hmm. It's not a bad like it's not a it's quite a confronting thing to talk about because we're talking about hypothetically a shift in the priorities of an individual. But I also want to highlight the fact that there's a positive element to this because if you can perhaps be the person who pulls food from the ground, you ultimately become the hero in the hero story, and you bring the riches back to the people. You become a useful person. It's like there's the potentiality for things to fall apart. There's also the potentiality for you to become a person that can fix the problems. And being prepared for that
Yeah,
is inspiring in itself once you can get over the initial fear.
yeah. Well, I think if you can, regardless of whether an eggplant costs $1 billion or you know $5, whatever it is. Uh, yeah, I've been growing these. I haven't showed you them, Andrew, but I've been growing these 2 kilo eggplants. Not eggplants, zucchinis.
Oh my
Zucchinis.
god.
They're absurdly big.
Is
And
that the
one thing
filter
you
you
can,
had on earlier?
yeah, that's it. But one of the things you can think is, like, if the government, or well, the Reserve Bank and the Federal Reserve in the US, as they're printing money, if they devalue the currency, well, if I can pull something from the ground, like some natural resource, something like food, and I can trade with that, regardless of what money's doing, I can have more of like a base economy, a base commodity to trade in that hopefully should protect me going forward.
So you're gonna be like the zucchini merchant or something?
Yeah.
Okay, so if the economy goes to shambles, your plan is zucchinis.
No, not just bikinis, but you know what I mean, man. Like,
See, I want to be wary to people that are going forward in the creative domain and also an attention thing because I've tried to be in a band. I've tried to do a few different things that require attention as its main kind of focus. And the market is just so saturated for things like that. And I think there's a need for the ability to practically do stuff because it's like I've been able to change a few different taps and a few different piping elements and stuff like that around people's houses just because I've been able
we
to do
we
it.
got to get away from plumbing. Talk about some car
Yeah.
stuff or something.
Oh yeah, like
You're
fixing.
gonna just start requesting to be like a fucking tradie or
That's
something.
what I'm gonna do,
It's like you
man.
go
I'm
to
gonna
trade
provide
cards, learn to
water
be
to
a
the
plumber.
people. No, but just like having those skills of also being able to diagnose what's wrong with a car. It's like you'll be the one in what like 1,000 that can do that. you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, I reckon in some places that number would be right. Like, there's certain places where nearly everyone's handy still, but in some places no one knows anything. And another thing I've noticed is the people who don't have any practical skills. You talk to them about what they supposedly should know, say they work in tech. They don't fucking know that shit either.
Mm,
Like, they're literally just like great big parasites that just sit on the economy, not doing anything for anyone. And when things go wrong, they don't have any skills to be able to help out in any way whatsoever.
mm.
God forbid they have negative knowledge where they only know how to make things worse because
Mm.
they've got a bunch of dumb ideas in their head.
See, that's interesting as well because I don't think it's something you would have noticed like over time because you probably don't see me in the situations where it would be evident. But when we were living together is when I bought my first car. And so you knew me when I had never owned a car, had never worked on a car, had never needed to book a car in for a service. And when I first was living with you and first got that shit fucking black car for
The one that
$700
exploded.
or something. Yeah, the one that exploded. But I got home one day and I popped the hood and it was shooting like brown, rusty, like mud all over the engine. And I was just like, it's not supposed to do that, right? Like, is that bad? Is it supposed to do that? And Luke was like, oh, I don't know, that doesn't look good. And now it's like, I would say not even a year later, I was like ordering radiators online, like getting in the car, pulling the hood apart, like taking the radiator out, putting a new one in. But a year before that, I was like, oh, fucking spooky liquid everywhere. I don't know what that means. And it's like,
Yep.
in the span of a year and a half, 2 years, I taught myself not only what these certain like sounds and mysterious liquids meant about my car, I could also fix them myself. And that was entirely shit I learned myself. I didn't like, no one taught me that. And I'm sure you remember the nights where I'd like be underneath my car, just like poking around trying to find a screw hole. And then eventually I'd find the right one, unscrew it, and all the shit would fall out. And it's like I just fucking poked. I spent an hour sticking a screwdriver up there, and then eventually it worked, you know. And
Yeah.
then
See,
every car I've had since, I just do the same thing, and I figure it out.
that's
Found out
the
there's a
thing that
book in the fucking glove box.
Dude,
I would encourage anybody to behave that way with everything. Like, just be the person who sorts it out, because there are some things that are really hard, but most of it's pretty easy.
the amount of videos that are on YouTube as well. I'm not saying take advice from YouTube, but for example,
I do.
the car that I own, there is a whole channel based on my car, my year model, and like the problems that this guy's faced, and he's uploaded every video. And it's like, not only can you access stuff like that, but if someone's not done it and you can figure some shit out, you can put that online and save a bunch of people's problems.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff we want to have around, like good, helpful, useful information instead of garbage.
Well, when you have a kind of like a common car, I would safely say all three of us have. Aaron has a fucking Corolla. We all have very like kind of mainstream, very popular out there cars. There's fucking millions of them on the roads. But I've had the first and second car I had. No one had those. I would look up like where something was. It didn't exist. There was no searches, which is why I had to find all that shit myself. Because they were like, this car doesn't exist. You made it up. And I'm like, all right, fucking whatever. I'll just have to find it myself.
Yeah. I built the whole app that way, literally just figuring it out piece by
Yeah,
piece.
Yeah.
good.
And it's like sometimes you just got to do and get better as you go
Oh yeah,
along.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're hitting our time limit for this tonight. With our guest speaker, Kian, popping in for a second. He's a good actor if anyone wants to get in touch with Mr. Kian.
Literally 10 seconds.
Yeah,
Actually, Will, on that, since he's such a good actor, can you name one thing he's been in? Just because
he's done a
he's
bunch
such
of.
a good actor, you. Hmm.
He's
No,
been
but like
in
specific names.
specific
You
names.
could
He's
probably name them, hey.
there's a Netflix series that he was in as an extra that he had a role
Yeah,
in.
yeah, I know the one. What's it called?
Dude, I can't remember. I'll have to like
Hmm.
get it off him and mention it next time.
Yeah.
But
It wasn't
anyway,
Wizards of Waverly Place, was it? Was it? No,
I
it
th-
wasn't that
was it
one.
was it that? Anyway.
No, it was very similar. It was like a shit version. Sorry, Kian.
Anyway, thank you guys for listening to the Recreate Meeting podcast, and we'll see you next week. Bye.